Scott, thank you for showing up. Thanks for coming on the show.
Are you kidding me? This is so humbling to be here with you. I have listened to your podcast. You are quite a treat, and I can't wait to dig in. I really can. I'm as interested in talking to you on camera as I am off about how you're building a business, and I know you're helping other people create that for themselves with your courses. I absolutely love it. I'm intrigued, and I can't wait to get kicking.
Oh my gosh. So you're not only successful, but humble and such a gem. We've done 600 episodes and we've had,
That's, by the way, that is insane. Congratulations. You're
well,
awesome.
I was just going to say it's very rare that somebody starts the show saying anything like that. So you're awesome. And we're going to dive in. So let's talk a little bit about your amazing journey. Like you started in one place, built sort of that tower as big as you can build it, and then you made a left turn and started to sort of open up to an even greater frequency and starting to talk about bigger truths and all of that. So we're going to talk about your book, but I want to sort of help everyone understand how that even showed up in your life. How did you go from being the CEO, sitting in that corner suite to where you are now?
Just sitting here with you. It's not a happy story, but I'm happy to share it. My brothers and I have three brothers and a sister. My brothers and I, every year we put on a baseball tournament, and we ran out of minor league stadium, and we get uniforms and have a draft. It's really fun.
Cute. That is so cute. Wow.
Yeah. We try not to call it cute, but it is wonderful.
I know. It's so not cute. It's like epic, but it's
epic,
like adorable and awesome that you would do that
epic.
together.
And one of my friends from business school was really not himself. And I found myself in a diner, at the wee hours of the morning talking to him to try to uncover what the heck was happening. And I said really naive things to him. And I said, choose happiness, it's a wonderful thought to choose happiness. And I think to many of us, we can decide to wake up in the morning and choose happiness. And I also said, you know what? When I'm down, I try to serve others. I said, that's what gets me out of my well. So why don't you go serve people and go choose happiness? And 2 weeks later, I got a phone call from a dear friend of mine, Jared Stone. And my friend Will had killed himself. And
wow.
Yeah, he had driven to his folks' house. And I don't mean to be graphic, but I'm going to be for a fact, and got a shotgun and just shot himself in the head. And I was not equipped. I wasn't equipped to handle that conversation. I have three daughters, and my wife had come up. I broke into tears, and I couldn't even say the words. And this is a dear friend. I mean, this is my kids call him Uncle Will, so he is family. And so my wife said, Lisa, I said, you need to go downstairs and tell the kids before they see someone on social media or, and I was just like, I could barely like string two sentences together. And finally I walked downstairs, and the kids were like in front of the computer. They're really silly. They're silly girls. So they were watching like old YouTube videos of themselves that they had posted when they were kids, singing and doing ridiculous things. They're all cackling and laughing. And I walk in just like stoically stone-faced. And I was like, Uncle Will's dead, killed himself. And I turned around and walked upstairs. And so while I lost my Father of the Year award that day as well, and all my wife could muster was, great job, and I couldn't see it. I couldn't get out of my own way. I was blessed enough or cursed enough to be asked to speak at the funeral a week later. I got through it and then fell apart. Like, and when I say fell apart, I couldn't get out of bed in the morning, couldn't fall asleep at night. I'd be in a meeting at work. I was still going to work. Somebody would say something, I kind of like half burst into tears and just walk into my office. I was just not in a good way. And I began to write to heal, not to write a book, but to heal. And have you seen Forrest Gump, the movie Forrest Gump? Most people have seen it. Do you know that scene where he runs out of the football stadium and then keeps running and he runs across the country?
Yeah.
Well, the scene, and he's just running like seemingly for weeks and weeks and weeks. And I never understood what that was about until I went through this. And then I did, because that's how I was writing. like he was running from something. He wasn't running to something. He was running away. He was running to escape. And that's, he was running to heal. And that's how I was writing. And a lot of it was gibberish. And I just had an iPad and I just on my little keyboard. And my wife, after 3 weeks of this, called a dear friend of ours, Randall Wright, who came up to see us and see me. I just wasn't aware that this was a whole plan. And he walked in. I was in my little office here, and he said, "So, how are you doing?" I said, "He's from Texas. He's got that great Texas drawl. And he's just a wonderful guy. Like, this would be insulting to him, but grandfatherly, like just a warm, loving soul." And I said, I'm doing fine. He's like, "Are you?" And I said, "Well, he said, Lisa says you're writing." And I said, "Yeah, it's just my own, it's kind of like a journal." He said, "Let me see some of it." I was like, it's like, I found myself just writing about times I failed in my life. And excuse me, and what I learned. And he said, "Well, let me see." So I just gave it to him and he started reading. He's like, "Oh, wow." He's like, "This is powerful stuff." And I was like, "Yeah, thank you." And he said, "What if you publish this?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's a no. I don't aspire to do that or be that." He said, "Scott, how many CEO books have you read?" I'm like, "I don't know, 100. And he asked me what the last book I read was, which was, I think, The Ride of a Lifetime by Bob Iger at the time. And I said, "I just love that book." And he said, "Well, why'd you love that book over others you read?" And I said, "Because it was human. Because he talked about having a nervous breakdown. And he talked about like the anxiety of wanting a big job. And he talked about stuff that like, that's what we deal with, and it's like everything looks like this perfect bubble from the outside. And look, I'm happy with my bubble. Like I know I've had big time fun jobs. Like I went to Harvard Business School. I like had this amazing wife and these 3 healthy daughters. Like I get that from the outside. And then you take a peek behind the curtain and it's rough, and it's not, I'm not sad about it. Like I'm okay. Like I'm authentically okay with who I am and what I've experienced. I've run a company to the ground. I've been fired from a whole high profile job. My best friend took his own life. I've had issues at home. We've had miscarriages together. Like I've had a whole host of things go south, and I'm not alone. Everybody does. And so his point to me, which I took to heart, was like, I had this, everybody has a why, like why, Cathy, why you do what you do. I'm sure you have a wonderful one. I'm interested in it. I'll ask you right after I'm done here. But mine is I want to help develop the next generation of leaders. That's what I'm passionate about. And I want to leave the world better than I found it. So he like turned that on me and he's like, "You say you want to help develop people." It's like, what if you shared some of this stuff? What if it was okay to be imperfect? What if it's okay to fail? What if it's okay, to have some mental health challenges? And it seemed like this book, came out during COVID, and then, the whole world fell apart, and it seemed to strike a chord with a lot of people, and it's been humbling, to be honest. Like I've heard from perfect strangers that this, one little segment of this made an impact in their life, or changed their relationship with their partner, or they changed the way they were doing business, or they created a common language at home, or all like these simple things that were some woven into these stories. And I will tell you, it's like, to that person, it's the most important thing I've ever done. I'd say like my children are, and raising my children, but to that person, that sentence, that exercise, that story, and that's it's been a humbling journey. So tell me about your why. What the heck are you? Why are you doing what you're doing?
Okay. First of all, I am going to answer your question, but it is just, it's so gorgeous. The amount of humility, the amount of vulnerability, it is striking. It is rare. It is powerful. And it is immediately connecting everyone who's listening to you instantly. And I'm just sort of, bowled over by it. And I'm like, just drinking it in, like catching my breath. Like what an offering that you just like allowed to show up here today.
I appreciate that. I think, I was talking to a group yesterday, a corporate group in New York, and I had them do this exercise, which I absolutely love. We're coming back to your why you're not getting away from it, just so you know. And I said, hey, take out your phones. And the title of my book's Be Where Your Feet Are, which essentially means put your phone down, get your head up. Like, that's the title of the book. So they're anticipating me hitting them over the head with like, put your freaking phone down, which I do. Okay. But I said, hey, let's start. Just pick your phone up. They all pick their phone up, you know. I was like, okay, go to text. I said, text your mom. And I want you to text your mom this. And I'd love the listeners to text your mom right now. Just hit pause and text your mom. And I would love you to text her this. Mom, I really love you. I appreciate everything you've ever done for me. And I know sometimes I don't always say it, but just know you're always in my heart. I love you, Scott. And I say, you don't have to say Scott if you don't want to, but you can. And then I go on to tell the story about like, because when I do it, I text my mom or my mother-in-law. And my mom sent me back a note and said, hon, are you okay? And I was like, oh, crap. You know, it's like, you know, and then one of the guys raised his hand. I'm coming full circle to your point. Guy raised his hand. He said, hey, this is really tough for men. And I said, this has nothing to do with being a man or a woman. Nothing. It's like gratitude is the fuel. Like, you know, it is the fuel of our lives. And we have it in our head. Like, think your mom, you know, like we've done, you know, and I said, some of them, you know, there are all some older guys there, some women, but I said, hey, if your mom's not around, just a woman that's had an impact in your life. And I'll tell you, like, you know, the practice of waking up in the morning, and then I go through this exercise where when you wake up in the morning, I say, how many of you have your phone by your nightstand? And they're like, you know, half the people. I'm like, stop doing it right now. Just stop. Keep it in the bathroom. No phones in the bathroom and in the bedroom. No phones in the kitchen. Like, just have some rules, you know? And then I said, look, when you wake up, you know, and I said, like, how many of you pick up your phone before you brush your teeth? Almost everybody. Can you imagine? And I said, okay, great news. When you pick up your phone every day for the next 30 days, just send a note of gratitude or love or appreciation to somebody in your life. So I invite everyone to do that. Like, it's the simplest thing. And you know who it helps more? The sender. That's the irony. It's like we go through life so intentional then about thinking through like, oh, I need to send a note. Okay, subconsciously, in the universe, whether you believe in a higher power, which I do, or you believe in karma, or you believe in doing good, whatever you believe in is wonderful. The world will send you people that need to hear from you. And so that's my little invitation. So let's get back to
you. Oh my God, that is so awesome. That is so cool. I really want everyone to do that. And yeah, I mean, it's all about the gratitude, and that which we give away is like the only thing that we ever receive. You know, you mentioned your children already like 6 times because you've given. The people you give to are the ones that you feel you love most because you've given so much love. So when we give, that's what we receive. And so we forget that we're always responding to things before we do it. And it's like, no, the more you do, you show up, right? You then get back. So it's fascinating, actually, the way that the universe and God organizes our lives, because you asked me that question and then you shared what you shared. And then you shared this other piece, and you shared both of the things that make up my why, which is my mom, when I was growing up, was dealing with her own sadness. My parents had a very unhealthy and unhappy marriage. They wound up breaking up. And when they broke up, my mom tried to take her own life.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
As a child, I grew up with sort of, you know, what's going to happen? Am I going to have, I learned this term called 5150 and Baker acting somebody when I was a kid, because I had to know what to say to an ambulance person. And we struggled with that for years. And my dad was kind of doing his own thing. And now it's interesting, Scott, actually yesterday, February 10th, I had breakfast with my mom and dad and my sister, the 4 of us, that's just our immediate family, for the first time in 30 plus something years, because it was grandparents' day at my daughter's school. And then we just decided, let's have breakfast. And now my dad has Parkinson's and whatever. But the point is,
my dad had Parkinson's. We have way too much in common. This is really
so much in common. But it's interesting because 100%, the why is having grown up, seeing somebody in the throes of why am I here? What's the point? It definitely inspired me to want to not only seek for answers to why are we here, but to hopefully help serve other people a message that they're needed, that they get to make up this movie of their life, and that they can impact other people and they can contribute something that only they can. And so That's really, we're
I
on a
love,
similar page.
I love, love, love. I have this friend, and he's really cynical. I don't really have too much like judgment or cynicism. It's just not how I go through the world. Like I said, everyone's kind of, I always say that we're the sum total of our experiences, who we surround ourselves with, and what we aspire to be. And whoever you give more weight to at one point, that's where, you end up in place. But he seems to be very cynical. And I was walking him through some of my jujitsu of life, and he said, no, it's just, it's you being self-centered. And I was like, huh, like I don't, okay, like I don't feel that. That's not how I feel. So help me understand. He's like, no, it's all about utility. And his view on people is so different than mine. His view on people is that, well, you're doing that. I'd say, he would say this to you, you're doing that for you. And I was like, no, like I have love in my heart. Like I truly want to help. And he said something like, because it makes you feel good. I was like, okay, I don't want to have a conversation with you. And so it all goes down to that, for me, like that triangle. It's like, am I choosing to spend time with him anymore? I'm not. And so like, I love your energy. You have such amazing energy. And I love I love your why. I love your will. And was there one part of that lunch that you will remember forever, or one thing that was said that you feel special about that you can share?
One thing that was said, I think it was just, my sister did say it out loud. Wow, this is the first time in however long. And she's like, it's beautiful. And it was just the amount of compassion that both of my parents now have for each other, and all that remains in the energy field that we were all sitting in was just love, right? They had like surrendered all of the ego, so just to be in that is beautiful to see that. So this book that you wrote, it's so good, and I want to like dive into it. First of all, the title itself is phenomenal, right? Like we just heard the backstory. I could think of a zillion possibilities for what you would have then titled this book, but you titled it Be Where You Are, right? Be where you are, 7 principles to keep you present, grounded, and thriving. So let's start there. What does it mean to be where you are? And why is it that being present is sort of the umbrella to all of these things?
Yeah, it's a rich question and has a lot of depth, and hopefully I can give you at least a nugget or so. I spend a lot of time with people, and I would walk into a conference room and everybody would be on their phones, and I walk through the hallways and people be on their phones, and I come home and my kids are on their phone. And I think there's a notion of, I wasn't comfortable with that, and so I set up some rules, and it's easy when you're the boss, right? So I just said, hey, no phones in the conference room. And you can imagine, I work with a lot of young folks, and they're like, what am I supposed to use a pen? Like, should I chisel this? I gave me all the sarcasm for, and I said, yeah, you need to use a pen. And like, I'm so much more interested in you turning to your right or turning to your left and saying, hey, how was your weekend? Hey, I heard you went to a concert. What was it like? Oh, your kid scored a goal. Hey, you went to Mexico. What? I actually don't care. I don't care if it's work or home, but like, we need to like recreate some interaction. I just a story when I'm working for these sports teams. I'm very competitive. You can hear my voice. I don't know if you can hear my voice is a little hoarse. I'm coaching high school girls basketball now, so I've been screaming for 7 weeks in a row. And but I'm very competitive, and working in pro sports, you go through some highs and lows. And I was, with the New York Knicks at the time, we were losing a lot of games in a row. And I came home and I was mad. And I get home 11:30, 12 o'clock at night. I was steaming mad. We got booed off the court. I got home, my wife, she's like, I was stomping around the kitchen like a child, like a petulant child. She comes home, she's a tough lady. And she's like, what's going on here? I'm like, what do you mean? And I like defensive mechanism right away, right? Because I like to debate, and I'm, boom, I'm in that mode. So I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, what's going on with you right now? You're stomping around the kitchen, like, what's up? And I said, did you see the game? So yeah, I saw the game. I was like, did you hear the boos? She's like, Scott, I didn't even need a TV on to hear the boos. I can hear them from here. And I was like, well, that's why I'm mad. She's like, how good are your teams this year? I was like, nah, not very good. It's like, what are you gonna lose 100 games, you think, between the three teams? I was like, yeah, that's about right. She's like, so 1/3 of every day you're here, you're gonna be pissed off.
Mm.
And I was like, no, I mean, well, yeah, I mean, well, and she's like, this ain't gonna work for me. This ain't gonna work for the kids. Like, you need to rethink what you're doing here. You need to think like about the energy you're bringing into the space. It's really good counsel. And I never, everyone reacts differently. I always react emotionally away, right away. I don't do a great job in that first debate action. And then I, sleep on it or take some time and then come back and say, you know what? Interesting, you might have pointed out. But I was talking to a friend of mine the next day, and he's like, he's like, oh, you need a worry tree. And I was like, I don't even know what that is. He's like, yeah, man. He's like, I got the same thing. Like, I come home wired. He's a private equity guy. It's like, he comes home wired at night. He's like, I just walk up this tree, put my hand right on the tree. My worries go up in that tree. I was like, my man, I do not have a tree like that on my property. I need a tree. He's like, it's not about the tree. It's about how are you going to compartmentalize so that you can be present. So when you're home, you can be connected and be a dad and be a husband and be a friend and be a neighbor and be part of the community. When you're at work, you can be like an engaged person at work. And so I had so many like lessons in my life like that, and feel very strongly that we will be better as a society, as a family, as a company, as friends, when we put our phones down and keep our head up. I mean, think about the last time you went to lunch with your girlfriends, okay? You go to lunch, you're late or almost late. I show up, they're on their phones. I was like, yo, guys, what's up? We haven't seen each other in a year. Like, what are we actually looking for? Like, do you think it's a defense mechanism? Is it like a stall tactic? Is it because we're socially awkward? Is it because like the isolation has been our kryptonite and we don't really know what to say, when to say it? We just need to do a better job. It's like you go out for dinner, leave your phone in the car, keep it in your back pocket unless you're taking a photo. Like, let's be better. Let's do this differently. Let's see if we can like be where our feet are. Like, it completely changes. It's not about giving 10% of your time to you and 10% of time to you and 10% of time to you. It's like, when I'm with you, I'm giving you 100%. It's just a different mentality. I think it makes life better.
Yeah, 100%. So true. I had Marianne Williamson here, I don't know, a week or so ago, and she said, everyone's always asking this question about like, what am I supposed to do? What's the next thing I need to do? And she's like, we need to understand the other question, which is, who am I supposed to be? And we don't pause enough. She said, we don't get off our phones enough to actually stop. And she was telling a story of how she went to a friend of hers in South Florida for the Sabbath. They're Orthodox Jews. And she's like, and I thought, they have teenagers. How are they going to like handle this without their phones? And she's like, Cathy, literally, like, there were no phones. There was like, oh, let's play Scrabble. Hey, Dad, tell me what happened when you remember you told me the thing about grandpa and da 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 da. And she's like, and then there's like stories being told because there's no phones. She's like, I was mesmerized by the pause, right? Yeah. And this is unusual. Just like I said when you came on and you were like, you said something so kind and generous to me. What she just said, that's so unusual. Like, no one is saying these, and it echoes what you're saying. So let's get into some of these principles. You say in your book, there are 7 principles to be in this present, grounded place to help you thrive. Let's just talk about some of those principles so we can apply them to our life.
You want me to just bring one up?
Yeah, the ones that you feel most connected to in this moment.
Okay, fantastic. API is probably the one I always feel the most connected to. So API stands for assume positive intent. Assume positive intent is like giving people the benefit of the doubt. So it's like if you have a teenage daughter and a mom in the same room, it's the opposite of that. It's like there's no baggage, there's no luggage, I always think about those like mountain guides with all like stacked luggage. They have it hard. If you get a note from your boss and says, I need to see you at 12, and you immediately, your blood pressure goes up and you're starting to stress and you're wondering, is he going to be mad? Am I losing my job? Am I in trouble? You're not assuming positive intent. If you go see a friend who you haven't seen in a while and you're going there and you're already mad on your drive to go see her, yeah, you're not assuming positive intent. If your phone rings and you're like, are you kidding me? you know, or, you know, in our case, you know, our daughters, and, you know, if there were a place to get them some good driving lessons, it would be wonderful. Did you know, just as a quick aside, that if you are bad enough drivers over a period of time, the insurance company, they won't charge you more money. They'll just walk away. They do. It's awesome. Yeah, that happened to us. So anyway, so if your daughter calls and said, oh yeah, you have enough accidents, and they just walk away. And I was like, hey, I'm sure I could pay more money. Like, no. We don't want to work with you ever again. So anywho, okay. So if my daughter,
Holy hell.
right. So
Oh my God. That is all kinds of levels of scary.
Oh, you've no idea. It's like I dropped gummy bears and got into an accident. I am like losing my mind. Okay. A bee flew in the car. I drove into a tree. Like everything that could possibly happen to these kids. And so, that's where like, I don't assume positive intent. I hear like I got a speeding ticket or I got into another accident. Like I can just say like, I'm sorry, honey. You know, I'm already assuming it's their fault. One of them, you know, I mean, it's not the other guy or the other woman, I promise you. And so that's where, and instead of me asking questions and being compassionate and being kind, I don't do a great job of that. It's great stories in the book. A dear friend of mine, Chester Elton, who'd be a lovely guest on your podcast. He's wonderful. He's written like 12 best-selling books. Guy's amazing. The Apostle of Appreciation. It's a great handle. He was a young boy and he was in Vancouver. He's walking with his dad. And he's walking past kind of like a seedy park, and we've all walked through seedy parks. No judgment here. And this woman who clearly had all her possessions on her was carrying them in her bag, and walked right by him and tripped, and her bag fell and all the stuff fell out. And my friend, like a young boy, just quickly like darted across the street, and not his dad. His name's Dog. He just kind of kneeled down and helped her pick everything up and whispered something in her ear. She kind of chuckled. And then she was on her way, and he went over to my friend Chester, who's now an adult, and Chester said, Dad, you can't talk to those people like they're dirty. You know, he's like, Chess, everybody's having a bad day. And what he's saying there is like, assume positive intent, like find some love. Another great example is when I was with the Philadelphia 76ers, we built a training complex in Camden, New Jersey. And Camden is a notoriously tough town, and high crime rate, you know, average household income $13,000, graduation rate in the 50s. You know, it's a tough place, open air drug markets, the whole thing. And he took over as police chief, and he wanted to change the way that the police were viewed and the citizens were viewed. And so he started dropping people off and just saying to these officers, like, you know, see you in 12 hours. Like, if you want to eat something, you better get to know somebody who's a good cook. If you want to go to the bathroom, you better get to know somebody. Effectively, like, let's be part of this community. And he tells the story of us, tragically, this young teenage girl was shot in a drive-by and tragically killed. And the sergeants came in the middle of the night, and they're banging the table. Hey, we got to lock down the city again. But he's like, no, that's not what we're doing. And his idea was to rent 2 Mr. Softy machines and put them on the ends of the streets and have the cops in there serving free ice cream. Because he's like, this is about love and understanding. It's like, they're not all bad guys. There are a couple bad guys. We got to go find them. And the best way to find them is to be part of this community. And then they'll tell us who the real bad guys are. And I just love that notion of just assuming positive intent. If you came to my house, you see it. It's over all our doors when you walk out. And if you went to my daughter's rooms, they're all on a rock carved in there. Because that's the one thing I want them to walk through life with. And I want to leave my house every day. And by the way, I'm not perfect at this. So I'm a work in progress. So that's one I think that if you remember one thing from this podcast, it's assume positive intent. Like, walk in, just what we say, and we're palms up, meaning I'm not cross my arms. I don't know everything. I'll give you a good story from work too. Last one, I swear. I had this, I worked with this guy, Adam Davis, wonderful guy. We worked at Madison Square Garden together, and then later at HBSE. And he was a chief commercial officer, big time deal maker, amazing deal maker, wonderful soul, wonderful guy. And he seen me at my best and he seen me at my worst. And so he comes to my office one day and he goes, Scott, just like, I need you palms up and I need you API. So what he was saying to me was, okay, Mr. CEO, okay, I don't need the arms crossed, wagging the finger, tell me what was wrong and what went wrong. I need your experience. I need your creativity. I need your love. I need your open mind. Help me solve this. We'll post more later and figure it out what happened. But I need this. And what I love about that story is one is he's strong enough, and clearly I'm open enough to hearing it, but he's strong enough to deliver that message, which is real. But that we have a common language, you know, and you'd hear that in my home too. If one of the girls are going off the rails, you'll hear somebody say, "Hey, API, I spilled the milk." Like everyone goes crazy. API, I didn't mean to like dump the milk. I didn't mean to get a mark on your sweater. I didn't mean to not charge your computer, whatever that is. Like just going through life with some compassion and empathy and love and just assuming positive intent makes the world better.
Yeah. It reminds me of Adam Grant. We were talking about people who kind of can predict things. And he said, you know, do you think that the best predictors in the world, whether they're predicting the stock market or they're predicting climate change, do you think that they ever change their answer? And he said the answer is they change it often. And he said, because in the expert's mind, there's only one answer. In the beginner's mind, there's infinite answers. And the idea being like what you're saying, you know, if you walk in with beginner's mind, if you walk in with, I'm just going to be curious here, I'm just open to whatever really is going on without assuming this was their motive, this is it's like maybe we can see different things. Maybe we can experience different things. And Brian Grazer said that to me, that, you know, how he's made any movie or any project is from just like having really curious conversations where he walks in and he's just like, what does this person have to tell me in that story about your friend Chess? And who knows who this person is who dropped all the possessions and what's going on, who the cops are going to talk to and what they're going to find out. Like if we allow it to be like, I don't know, and I'm curious and I'm open, right? Oh my God, we can probably find so many jewels that we are never going to find when we know, right? Because we are an expert. We already know. We've decided this is how it is. Like, yeah.
Just cross arms in front. Like, I know I'm closed.
Right.
Do you have, when I said assume positive intent, was there anyone in your life that you always assume positive intent with? And is there anybody in your life, don't say the person that you don't, because they'll be listening. Was there anybody that came to your mind? Because every time I say it, people pop into my head. Like sometimes I just do a better job, you know?
Yeah.
When you talk about unlocking the power of relationships, you know, gratitude is one way, assuming positive intent is another. So anyone pop in your head that you are really good at that with?
Yeah. I mean, now that you asked me that, it's interesting because, and my husband is such a great guy and sweet person. And yet he's the only person I'll be like, oh my God, this shows, you see, he didn't consider this and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, I think I'm curious if the people listening, if you do that with your spouse, you know, and it's like, this is the person who loves you. This is the person who's seen me in my most, you know, ugly, awful, and he's still there, you know? So, that just is an interesting reflection that came to mind when you asked me. And then funny enough, like with my sister, and no matter what she does, like, it doesn't matter. I'm like, oh, it's fine. You know what I mean? Like, and it just goes to show that we've sort of wired ourselves a certain way. We could do that with everybody.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And I think like that the API was hard with me. Sometimes I get side with my wife and I don't assume positive intent. And then a perfect stranger will come up and I'll just assume everything's perfect.
Exactly. That's
what the heck are we doing? You know? Well, you're right. That
totally. So what else? There's so much in this book. What's another one of those 7 principles that you love?
What's most important? I love WMI. So are you a people pleaser?
Yeah, in recovery.
I know, but it's so wonderful to be a people pleaser. But like any quality you have that's positive, it's your crutch, you know, it's your Achilles heel. It's, you know, so for me, I definitely am a people pleaser. And what happens when you're a people pleaser is you try to say yes to everything and do everything. And I had this executive coach, his name is Spencer Holt. He's amazing. And he was helping me. I've had different executive coaches over the years, and they're all helped me with different things at different times and always seem to be the right person at the right time. And he said something like, how are you at prioritizing? How are you at saying no? I was going through this whole thing. I'm like, oh, here we go again. You know, I just like literally, I'm like rolling my eyes, but I don't have the gift to not actually roll my eyes. Like, you know, you're like, well, I rolled my eyes. You actually don't. I'm actually rolling my eyes and saying, I'm rolling my eyes. Like, I don't have the gift to like not show that. And he's like, what are you doing here? And I was like, what do you mean? I was like, I don't know. I just want to, I have real things I want to talk to you about. Like, this is this doesn't matter to me. Like what essentially I was saying that. I try to say it nicer, but I didn't. Okay. And he's a professional. Anyway, so he says, hey, high performers spend 65% of their time or more on the three things that matter most at work. How are you doing? And I was like, great, So of course, he's like, hey, do me a favor, just as we're wrapping up here. This is like 30 minutes later. As we're wrapping up, just have your assistant audit your calendar. Just give her the three things. Just have her audit it, and shoot me the results. I was like, oh, great, So I come back 23%. I'm like, slow clap for me, okay? And I consider myself a high performer. I am like driven. I work hard. And he used that, of course, as a weapon against me. No, I'm just kidding. He used that as an opportunity for me to grow, and it helped me, find the magic word of no, and a good friend of mine said once, like, Scott, you talk about, assume positive intent, you talk about loving people, you talk about helping people, but how does that work when you have to say no? And I was like, look, once you understand what's most important in life, like at work, it's easy. There are three things. Like I'm sure in your life, there are three things. Like if you do these three things, you win. If you don't, you lose. I mean, I have them. And so I and then there are three relationships. I always say like if my relationship with my wife is off the rails, it's, like it's marriage, like sometimes it's not perfect. If that's off the rails, things go badly for me. It doesn't work. The other two usually fluctuate depending on need or what I need or what they need or whatever. But I have three relationships, and then it's like three personal things. Mine's like do something for the mind, something for the body, something for the soul every day. If I do those three things, I take care of my three relationships. In my work, I take care of the three things that are most important. I find like balance and productivity in my life. So for me, I'd say that's one that I think is just a critical tactical change people have to make. And that starts with actually writing them down. Here are the three things that at work that make me very successful if they're good. Here are the three relationships I care about. And here are the three things I'm going to take care of myself personally on. So that to me is it's critical.
I love that. And since you have that part of your life that's simultaneous, it's like while you're so opening up now all of these conversations about the quality of our life, the quality of our relationships, you also have a track record for continuously having success and being able to run organizations and pulling people together and putting the right people in the right places. And so I do want to ask you what your perspective is on what those three most important things are to be successful in your work. If your work especially is your life purpose and something that actually lights you up and makes money and actually does good in the world, like right. What do you think are those three things?
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to answer it a couple different ways because that's a multi-layered question. So what I think makes people successful at work, I just want to make sure, like, I don't want to be too esoteric, but success for me is very different now than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Okay. Right. I remember being married on my honeymoon, writing down like 100 things I want to accomplish. My wife and I went through this exercise. The list is embarrassing. Like it's so painful. It's material. It's like, she saved it. I literally want to burn it. I want no one to ever see this list. Whereas now, my view of success is very different, but I'll center this on work, of course, here for this particular question. So there are three characteristics that I think successful people have that I have seen. They work unreasonably hard, they're intellectually curious, and they're extraordinary teammates. If you do those three things, your likelihood for success jumps through the moon. And nobody wants to be told to work unreasonably hard, but I don't think I have never seen a successful person not work unreasonably hard. I haven't seen it. I hope I do. But what happens is if you're that successful, you don't have to work hard, everybody will go do it. And then you'll have to work hard to get the edge. I mean, it's just basic economics. And then being intellectually curious, like the whole world's changing. I worked for this unbelievable guy, David Stern, who's the former commissioner of the NBA. God rest his soul, he's passed away. And he was not only the meanest man I've ever met before, but also the most wonderful.
Seems so sweet. I've gone to those all-star breakfasts and he comes up and he's got this New York accent. He seems so
sweet and charming are two different things. But he was the toughest guy. I mean, he said things to me I had to look up. Like he was rough. And by the way, if anything ever went wrong or south, nobody better to take. He helped me on things that nobody will ever know. And he was the first one to offer. And it was a wonderful, wonderful soul, but very, 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 very tough. But what I loved about him, by the way, he was so tough. We get on his plane, everybody run for the back. And I was a young guy, like I just sat right across from him because I'm like, this David Stern, he's like this, literally invented the business, the smartest man in the world, you know. And I was like, you know, a kid. I was like, I was okay. He'd screaming at me as long as I got to learn, you know. Anyway, so but he would get on, his old school guy, would get on the plane and he'd have you know, 8-9 inches of articles ripped out, newspaper and magazine, and not just sports, not just business, but life sciences, geopolitical. Like I remember being on this kind of funny story. I was on this one trip and he's like, you know, you think you're so smart, whatever. And I was like, nah, I don't think I'm so smart. I just want to, you know.
Nope.
He's like, no, you think you do. He's like, point your chest. And it's like intimidating guy. And I was like, nah, honestly, I don't. He's like, you don't even know what Wi-Fi is. That's Wi-Fi. But it was so early. He knew about Wi-Fi so earlier because nobody ever said it. And like, I mean, think about that. Like, it was wild. Like, he was so researched on AIDS that when Magic Johnson contracted the virus, he actually used it as a platform to put him in the All-Star game to change the worldwide conversation on AIDS.
Amazing.
And like, you don't do that unless you've talked to the best doctors in the world, unless you've read. Like, it's just like, I think we had an office in China in the 80s. Other leagues, the other 3 leagues got there in the 2000s. Like, he just was just different. And he was different because he was really intellectually curious. And then being an extraordinary teammate, it's actually one of the principles we talk about, Purple Water Buffalo, which I can tell you a story about how it became that. But I just, you know, I came into the sports business as a kid. I was 22 years old. I was a marketing assistant, you know, taking dictation, picking up dry cleaning and getting lunch and all that crap work. And the 2 guys that sat next to me in my cubes, one guy, Brett Yormark, is running Jay-Z's agency now, Rock Nation. And before that, he built the Barclays Center and the Brooklyn Nets and moved into Brooklyn. And my other friend, Howie Newchow, sitting on my right, he's running CAA, the biggest talent agency in the world. And you're like, so I only tell you that story because, like, it doesn't make sense. So I'm Howie's the godfather of his kids. Like, so I only said it because it's not that, and I'm a good teammate. Like, I'm friends with them. They're my good friends, you know? And so did they have to be? Could we have been climbing all over each other? Sure. Could we have like been treating each other like step ladders and trying to step on us or squashing us to the boss, or telling John Schultz was our boss, just killing each other? No, but we're like, hey, let's do this together. This will be so much fun. And you wake up and you look around and all these people are now running big things. And we all have to work together. And so, I don't know. I just think that especially young people, when they come into the business, you know, I always tell them when we sit down, I say, you know, look around. There are 100 people your age that work here, 100. In 20 years, 50 of them will be running big businesses. If you're just friends with them, if you're literally just a wonderful teammate, if you look to help them and share, and if something's working, you share it, you share credit, you share praise, and like, your whole world changes when you grow up. And I said, I know you can't see that now, but I promise you, like, once you do that, once you find that zone and that becomes the essence of who you are, people know, like, we know what's authentic. I think the world is a lot.
It's interesting. So my husband used to be VP of business and legal at Fox Sports. And so for 15 years, he would say, do you want to go to the All-Star breakfast? Do you want to do this? I'm like, no, you go, you know. So finally, one time I'm like, all right, I want to go. So we go, and Scott, I felt like I was in church. I couldn't stop crying. Every person who spoke, Magic, Kareem, every person who spoke, they didn't even have to say it because it's in their essence, but what they did say, right, about the Waltons, about John Wooden, anything that came up was about being in a team. Yeah. And I was so bowled over. I was like, oh, this is what's happening. This is what's happening on the court. This is the electricity that we're watching. It's people setting their ego aside, being able to step in to their full potential, and at the same time, work together towards a common goal. I've never seen such humility. I didn't expect to see it, right? I had
Yeah.
already talked about API. I had made up my mind about who these people are in it for. And it was astonishing. I was like, oh, okay, I have a whole new respect for sports. So coming off of that conversation, I think that when I speak to a lot of people, similar to how you said it could have gone down, I think people they believe that there's so much scarcity in the world that if I don't take mine and if I don't try to get mine, like I'm gonna lose. Like there's a lack of understanding that
Yeah.
actually, if we are a collaborative force, there's so much more abundance. And so maybe you can talk about that a little bit,
I
because
love that. I
yeah,
love the word you use. I love the word scarcity because I don't believe there's scarcity in the world. I believe there's abundance. And I believe there's
yeah,
abundance of opportunity. And I believe there's abundance of jobs and abundance of
yeah,
praise. And yeah, I think those that have that mindset, it's very hard to shift people's mindset. Um, and again, I talked about, it's like, what you experienced. I'm a product of food stamps as a kid. So like I
oh
didn't
my
have
god,
yeah. So and it's a really fun journey. Food stamps to like country club to losing it all. Like, so as a kid, it kind of
like
cool.
I've
Like,
had every part of the roller coaster.
yeah, no, but like it's wonderful. Like my next door neighbor growing up was a a semi truck driver, and then I'm at a country club with the doctor's kids, and then we lost it all, and like so I felt just as ease in a boardroom as I did with the janitor, and like it's funny. I've had some like really like funny comments. I remember I was with this famous CEO, Jamie Dimon from Chase, and he did a big deal in Madison Square Garden. I'm walking with him, and as I'm walking, like, and I'm not consciously doing this, but my coworkers are the janitors, the security guards, the ticket takers, the ushers. I mean, they're my coworkers. So I'm like, "Hey, Fred, what's going on? Hey, Joe, good to see you again." And he's like, "Do you know everyone that works here?" I'm like, I mean, yes." It was kind of like a funny, and it was, and again, it was just one of those like interesting moments in life. Like, okay, I took that as like a tremendous compliment. Like I'm connected to the group. But it was just a really like one of those moment times, like, right, but that's where I'm at ease. So it's kind of funny, but yeah. So I grew up, and when you grow up with nothing, you don't know that you have nothing. I guess you would now with social media and all, but like you only know what you have. I thought everybody had mac and cheese every night. Like how would I know? Pancakes for breakfast again, pancakes for dinner again, pancakes for lunch. I mean, like, you don't know. And then you have something, a pool in your backyard, and you're like, wow, this is awesome. And then losing it all. But anyway, so I understand the perspective of scarcity. I think it's about the worst perspective you can have. And think about, if you just, I think what's hard is, we live in for the, like, it's not for the, it used to be like, you live for the moment. It's like we live for the instant now. It's like, it's come even closer. And I just want you to just put life back on the horizon a little bit, and understand that, everything's not going to be given to you today. I love this rising generation. It's one of my favorite generations to work with. But they expect full transparency, okay? They expect full access. Okay. They want to be promoted in week 1. They want the corner office by week 2, Now, for that, they're really the smartest generation we've ever had. They're the most connected generation we've ever had. They're very hardworking. They're very smart. Like, you get some trade-offs. And what you're trying to do as a leader or manager or CEO or whoever, you're trying to like galvanize this force. Because once you galvanize them and get them connected and understanding that with the connectivity of life and how it all comes together, it's like, I'm 51 years old. Like, for me, doing a deal, it's a lot easier than when I was 22, because I know everybody. I'm calling my friends, and if I don't know the person, I'm like, hey, can you call so-and-so? Hey, can you connect me with so-and-so? And if you just put your world out on the horizon for 20 years and say, okay, how do I want to look in 20 years?
yeah.
Life gets a lot easier, and your path becomes clear. And maybe it's I'm living in la la land, but for me, that's what I've seen of people being really successful over time.
And you said over time, you're like, came from this place, built it, lost it. And that is really such a mirror of so many of the most successful people, and then they build it again, right? And
Yeah.
so there I've had so many of these conversations, Howard Schultz has been here, and Barbara Corcoran and Damon, like all these people who are literally making billions of dollars, and it doesn't phase them at all. That journey of like, Howard Schultz came from public housing. He's like,
Right.
yeah, started with nothing, built this thing died, then you build this again. So that's the complete opposite of scarcity, when you're literally like, yeah, I can burn to the ground, you build it again. How can you
Right.
help people understand what that phenomenon is all about? How does a person see it all go away and then go, it's okay, I'll build it again? From what?
Such a rich question. Look, I have been broke as a kid and I've been broke as an adult. Okay. It's much better to be broke as a kid. Okay. When you're broke as an adult, it's hard. Okay. And so I will say that, so it's a quick story. So I kid out of business school, went back to the Philadelphia Eagles, started this company, Hoops TV, and it crashed and burned. We raised $15 million, and poof, it was gone. Okay, and it was a cool company. We were ahead of our time. The team, they're doing incredible things now. Like chalk it up to a bad president. That was me. Whatever the case may be, bad timing, bad president, who knows? But the thing collapsed. Now I don't have a nickel. Okay, my wife had retired, got our first kid, had a house. So I'm getting foreclosure notices on the house. It's out of this world. Like I'm signing up for a merit at some crap service that destroys your credit for 7 years, but I don't know what I'm doing, And by the way, this is a Harvard Business School graduate, Mr. Smarty Pants. Okay. So it happens. Am I richer, better, stronger for it? Of course I am. Do I make better decisions? Yes, I do. Am I much more better educated? Yes, I am. Have I helped a lot of people avoid some of the situations? Yes, I have. So, but I think your question is the bigger one, which is how do you compartmentalize that? And I think, at least for me, and I'm not Howard Schultz, but for me, it's like I just think about life as this incredible journey that we're on. I think the analogy of, hey, it's the top of the mountain, I think it's a terrible analogy. Like you get to the top of the mountain and you figure out a few things. One, the view is great. Two, it's really lonely. Three, all the fun just happened on the way up.
Yeah.
Every trip, every fall, every connection, the people you made, the deals you did, like all that rush of like, we can do this, the esprit de corps, like let's charge up the mountain, get to the top, you're like, let's go do it again. So I think it's like, it's not, if you want to use a mountain, say it's a mountain range, okay? Because that at least shows that we're going up and down. But think of it as like a journey, and your journey can be roller coaster, which mine is, or it can be a nice, like, Polar Express train, whatever that for me, it's a roller coaster of life. And I have loved, I didn't love losing all my money, and I didn't love, putting my family at risk, and I didn't love foreclosure. That's not what I'm saying. What I appreciate though is like, I appreciate that journey, and I appreciate that experience, and I appreciate the learnings. And by the way, my wife, who's a total warrior, I mentioned her a couple of times, like she was like hiding the foreclosure notices. I was like, after we lost the company, I was firing a bunch of people. It was not a good place. And she's like, we'll be fine. We'll be fine. We'll be fine. In fact, a little Starbucks moment, her girlfriend said to her, like, your husband's not even working. Like, if I tell my husband, go get a job at Starbucks, and my wife's like, Scott's not working at Starbucks, But her girlfriend wasn't wrong either. She was like, you should go make money, And my wife's like, he's not in a place right now to do that. So we just need to batten down the hatches and figure it out. And so it's like, so where you end up on that scale, that's personal. Like, again, we're all a product of our experiences and people. And
what did you wind up, I mean, obviously we see you where you are in this moment, but what did you wind up doing that turned it around?
Yeah, good question. So I was playing a lot of, do you have anything that like escape in the world for you? Like something that, like you do something and it's like, you're free. Is there anything in your life like that?
Yeah. Tons of
so mine is pick up basketball. I played this morning. So that's my escape. And so for as long as I will be able to walk, I will play. Because I walk in and I hear the ball bouncing. And I could be watching like 5-year-old little bitty girls play, or I can play myself. It's my escape from the world. And so I was playing basketball, trying to clear my head. She handed me a book. I had to go on a trip, like a wedding or something. She handed me a book called Leadership and Self-Deception. And I'm on the plane reading the book, and I'm crying on the plane. Like literally, like, like the ugly cry. Like I'm just, And the poor person next to me, you know, I'm sure is like, you okay? You know, but there's a scene in the book where this guy is struggling with his son, and he sends his son out to one of those Utah rehab facilities for kids, like, hey, we'll shape up your kid. And he's going to pick his son up. And his son is coming down from the mountains, literally covered in dirt and scraggly hair, and been there for like 2 months, like living off the land with a bunch of kids. And at that moment, he's looking at his son. He's like, holy shit. Oh, excuse me. I edit that out. Holy crap. It's me, not him. So in other words, like, he's like, get the kid in the mountains. And that's why I started crying, because, and I think I was emotional because, like, I had every reason in the world why this business failed. You know, it was the .com bubble. We were ahead of our time, blah, 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 blah. It was everybody else's fault. If we had done this better, we were not. And so I'm reading this, I'm like, put it down. I come back from my trip, take my little daughter, she was 1 at the time, take her on this long walk. I come back, say to my wife, I'm ready to go. She's like, thank goodness, you know? And I spent, you know, that day I made 200 phone calls to 200 people I knew. And in 3 weeks, I had 3 offers of job, and I ended up taking the job at the NBA. Actually, great story if you want to hear it. You want to hear this one? You'll like this. This is
so good already. Yeah.
Yeah. So our business was in competition with the NBA. So we had been threatened with some lawsuits from the commissioner, my later to be boss, a few times. And so Adam Silver, who's the commissioner now, had walked me in there through Seth Berger, a friend of mine who financed the business. And so I sitting in front of David Stern, and he's interviewing me like this with his back to me. Can you imagine? So he's looking out the wall asking me questions, and they're not nice questions.
This is like a Seinfeld episode.
It's worse than that.
It's like, how is this possible?
Why are you wasting my time with like those kind of questions? You know, why would I trust you? You know, like that kind of like, you know, stuff like that. And he's like, what do you want to be, a general manager? You know, I said, no, you know, I want to run a business. And, you know, I know that you're the commissioner, and I know you can help me do that, and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, so he sends me down to see one of his lieutenants. I go down to see this lieutenant, and the lieutenant says like, hey, I have to hire you. So let's figure this out. You know, I was like, wow, that's great. So, but that's not great. It's great and it's not great, right? It's like, he has to hire me, right? So we, you know, he says, come up tomorrow. Now, at that point, like, coming up to New York was expensive. I know that sounds crazy, right? But like, I didn't have any money. So I was taking like New Jersey Transit because it was $14 as opposed to air check, which was $50. Like, you can't even imagine, like, this is low dojo time. Like, this is like, like scrape the, you know. So he's like, can you come up tomorrow? I'm like, sure. So I come up the next day. We agree on a deal. Next day he says, can you come back up? I was like, yes. So we come back up for lunch. I sit down for lunch, and he's like, hey, I'm going to have to walk back that deal. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, I'm going to have to walk it back. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, it's, you know, whatever. It's going to have to be $50,000 less, whatever the number was. And I was like, I just literally get up from the table. I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing this. And I walk out. Okay, now I don't have anything. I can barely get home.
I have chills.
Okay, so I come home. Can you imagine telling your husband if you do that? So I go home. I'm kind of like, my wife's like, how'd it go? I'm like, well, yeah. So anyway, then the commissioner calls. I don't think I've ever told. So the commissioner calls that night, and it's a 914 area code, which is where I grew up. And so I think it's one of my clown high school friends. So I answer the phone, hello. He's like, this is David J. Stern. Who is this? I'm like, oh boy. So I'm like 29 years old, thinking I know everything, right? And I am scared. I'm like ghost white scared. I'm like, oh,
I'm
sorry.
scared.
I thought you're my friend. He's like, yeah, no, this is Commissioner of the NBA. I was like, and then he like was tearing into me about like me walking away. And I was like, hey, you retraded the deal, you know? And so, and anyway, ended up giving me the deal, and I ended up starting a week later. But pretty wild time.
That is the best story.
So brutal.
We are all riveted. You're so awesome, Scott. You're really so awesome. I mean, I feel like it's just amazing because as successful and knowledgeable and brilliant as you are, you're so oozing in humility that it's like, it's like something we've never seen. It's like something that you like look at at a museum and go, look, a person can be like this and like this. And you're just like, wow, that's so cool to just be witness to it. So I loved connecting with you. I'm blown away. Tell everybody where they can follow you, buy the book,
LinkedIn,
and be a part of this.
Scott O'Neill, Twitter @ScottO'Neill. Follow me. I would love to have you as a follower. Buy Be Where Your Feet Are. Read it. Send me a note. I'd love to see what you think.
We will. We're going to send the link to everybody. This was the best. You're so cool. Oh my God.
Cathy, I'm rooting for you always. Thank you. Thanks for the time.
You're the best. Have an amazing day. Keep
You
in touch.
too.
Bye.